a little while longer. So we're moving into the Budget Committee is now in session. We're moving into the second portion of our Department of Housing Community Development presentation, which is classified as all other services. Commissioner Braverman.
Thank you. Michael Braverman, Commissioner, Department of Housing and Community Development. Good afternoon again, members of the council. And is the correct title Mr. Vice Chair or Mr. Chair, Councilman? Pinkett. We have 4 services to do this afternoon. Before and aftercare, 604. Dawson Center, 740. Community Outreach Services, 752. And Summer Food Service Program, 754. The first 3 services are handled by Deputy Commissioner Reginald Scriber. I wanted to say these are critical services in terms of how we meet needs in Baltimore City, and they are, Deputy Commissioner Scriber really is a champion of those efforts in the city and in the agency, and I wanted to call him up to speak directly to those slides, but I wanted to say one thing first, and that is since the last time that we met and today, we honored Reggie's 50th year of service with the city of Baltimore.
Wow.
So, yeah. We're proud to have him, and Mr. Scriber, would you mind presenting the 3 services? There are 3 slides, before and after care, and the clicker is...
You have the clicker?
Margaret. Oh, there it is, right in front of us. Thank you, Margaret. Right
to
here,
you.
Mr. Scriber.
All right.
So before and after care is first.
Let me talk about before, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to talk about before and after care. This was a program that deals with the people who are in most need. We have 2 locations, one at Northwood and one at Waverly. They're both in schools. And this program has a tendency to have parents bring their children in before the school year, before the school commencement or class starts. So a person will bring their child in at 6 a.m. in the morning because they are capable parents who are going to work and they have no place else to put their children but before care. And so we have kids from 5 to 13 in this program, and unfortunately we can only house about 30 kids, but now we are 39 at Waverly, and we have 54 at Northwood, and we have a waiting list because what it does do, it gives parents a chance to have their kids watch and learn before school starts. And so what happens when school begins, the kid then goes from before care and goes right into the school. And so as I mentioned, it places in the school itself. And then what happens when school commences at 3:30 or 2:30, children are still in the location because parents don't get off of work until 5:30 or 6 o'clock. And so parents are then able to still work in a nice environment where they work at and still have care for their children. And children learn a variety of lessons and learn how to do X, Y, Z. And we coordinate very closely with the school system itself because the school system tells us whether the kid is making progress, whether the kid is failing, et cetera, et cetera. So this before and after care is essential to our kids in Northwood and Waverly, and it's a great idea. It brings about a lot of continuity between the school system and our before and after care program. And also gives the parents a sense of security that the children are well taken care of and also are learning in the process. And so we are comfortable with before and after care. This has really been a big plus for us in the agencies. And believe it or not, it's from, somebody asked me, well, what does this have to do with housing? Well, it's the social activity that brings about the continuity of bringing about a change in the environment. And as we change the environment with the crime the way it is today, and people shooting people with no reason at all, giving children an opportunity and giving parents the pleasure of making sure their children are in a safe environment and learning at the same time is a big plus for us, for the city and for those parents who have their children attend this before and after care program. Let's talk about the Dawson Center for a minute. You remember the incident in 2001 where Cornell, where Cornell and Angela Dawson and their 5 children was sitting on the steps and didn't want a drug dealer to interfere. And as a result, the drug dealer got angry and burnt the whole house down. 7 people were lost in that, Cornell and Angela Dawson, as well as her 5 children. And as a result, we in the department looked at this as a real disadvantage for people who were intimidated and afraid of people interfering with their youngsters. And at the time, they said the police department was called. I'm not sure whether the police took this serious or not, but no one came to Angela and Cornell's attention. As a result, the drug dealer burnt the house down. He's in prison now, and the children and Cornell and Angela Dawson was lost. That was in 2001. And so we had a mission. The mission was to look at what we need to do to build back the building at 1401 East Preston Street. It cost us $1 million to rehab that building. It was burnt almost down, but we actually stabilized the building from the outside, and we built the building back up, and we opened up the Dawson Center in 2003. And of course, your former colleague, Pam Carter, who was the council person at that time, came aboard to run the Dawson Center, and she ran it with a lot of thought and a lot of understanding. And so today, we have 55 young people who attend the Dawson Center from the hours of 2:30 to 7, and they get the kind of understanding and treatment where parents are standing by to get their kids stabilized and helped. And we think this is a big plus for the agency because we know that if we don't do some of these programs like this, our hope for kids in this city and keeping people safe and healthy becomes very minimal. So, and the Dawson Center has been what we call a safe haven for us because it gives us a sense of security. Now, all our funds for the Dawson Center is used for basically on staff. We do have field trips, we have educational components, we have other services that we arrive at and that we serve. But the primary reason for the Dawson Center is the churches in the area, Reverend Prentice, Reverend Carter, those preachers around the churches around the Preston and Eden Street jumped in and assisted us in terms of providing the kind of a support and assistance we need for the East Baltimore community. And so I must say that this has been a big plus for us and the Dawson Center. And then the last one that I want to talk about is the Ombudsman's Office, which is community outreach. This is the office that does everything that everybody else doesn't do. Let me just emphasize that. It stabilizes lots. It helps people who are in peril, people who are being intimidated. It supports people in communities. I was out on a walking tour yesterday in West Arlington. We move around the city every day, and we don't have it, and we deal with emergency processes. So if someone has a means of emergency, I get a call at 11, at 12, at 1, at 2. It doesn't matter what time of night it is. We're on top of it. We deal with all fires in the city. If a person has a fire, people think the Red Cross is the big saving. They do help. I'm not going to deny that. But we jump in. There's a staff person who goes out and look at the problem. We talk to the residents who are affected by the fire. If someone is injured or hurt, we go to the hospital and make sure what their status is. We look at every piece of the puzzle that the person that has this fire. And then the bottom line is they may get 3 days of assistance from the Red Cross, but then their housing needs become more significant. And so at that time, we have 2 options we use. We use a hotel, or we use an option of helping them find some stabilized housing in the community, and we do this every day, 24 hours a day, all night, all day, anytime that it occurs. And so this means a lot. We also jump into people, I just mentioned that people intimidated witnesses. I can't begin to tell you that there's not a call that the police officers don't come to my office or call me at home and says that John Smith has been intimidated. And we have to have documentation and verification that the person is intimidated, and that's a police report. I think you all heard about the incident on but the police was there today on, I forgot what it was, where the young man, it was a football star at the University of Maryland. I think it's on Bradish Avenue. I think it may be in your area, Councilman Pinkett. And as a result, his wife or his girlfriend was there today. She has 6 children, 6. She can't go back home, can't go back home. Now, people say the state's attorney will jump into this. The state's attorney doesn't take cases unless they are ready to testify and there's a witness. We're trying to change that. In the meantime, we have an obligation and responsibility to house these people, to assist them, to make sure they are safe and help them find new locations. And part of the mission is not only if there's never a trial, if there's never occurrence that they're gonna find a new place, then we have to jump in and help them find a place. And we assist in 2 ways. First, we identify a place. We talk to our colleagues around the city. We know every property owner have decent housing around the city. And then we actually assist them, and we look at what their income is. And the critical part, a lot of these people don't have income. Then we work with social services and make sure that we can find out if do they qualify for income, are they getting any TDAP, are they getting SSI? What income are they receiving to assist them? You know, people say, well, Baltimore is a very dangerous city to some extent. We talk about the good part, but we also have to talk about the bad part. Unfortunately, I have to deal with the bad part of this process, and it's not easy for me. And my wife used to tell me when I got a call at 1 o'clock in the morning to get up because we have an emergency. The last major emergency we had was at Lanville Towers, 1300 East Lanville Street, when the whole building was burnt down and everybody had to be relocated. Everybody. And so we provided emergency shelters and emergency assistance for everybody who was at Lanville Towers. And we have to have 2 or 3 places that we have to shelter people in until we know what we're going to do after the fact. And so we sheltered them at our building at 1400 East Federal Street. And then we started looking after we got a call from from the commissioner, Mr. Braverman, that we need to start finding hotels and places for these folks. That took 2 days, but in the meantime, we sheltered them for 2 days, and then we had to start finding hotels. And we still haven't collected all our money from HUD. We still have a big debt that HUD owes us today, but our responsibility is to make sure that everybody is safe. We buy cots, we buy blankets, we buy the kind of things that people need in a shelter. So we have all those supplies and equipment. So when we need to open up a shelter, we are ready to go there at the moment we get a call. And believe it or not, we are called first by police communications and fire communications when there are incidents that need our assistance. So I'm never asleep. I'm always awake. And so it may be 1 o'clock, it may be 10 o'clock. I may be on the way home and somebody says, well, you know, we just had a major disaster on such and such a street. My first thought is, who's on duty? Now, we usually have one of our persons on duty. If I can't respond to him or fire communications call me and say they don't get a response back, I'm in my automobile and I'm moving towards the direction of the incident because I need to find out what and how we need to do about the circumstances. Those are the 3 things that I want to talk about today, and we are now, these are vital things, and I know that Commissioner Braverman had made it very clear that we're going to keep these things going as long as we can, but these are not easy things to comprehend because there's never a dull moment that I don't get a call about someone who's being evicted, some women who have 6 children, someone who's been killed in this city, some fire that happens, some place that burnt down. It's a job that doesn't get a lot of recognition, but it's a job that's necessary. It's so necessary in this city to have this kind of job, and I must give Commissioner Braverman a lot of credit. We continue to stay focused, and I know my folks, we have a small staff, about 13. We have a food pantry as well at our location where we keep our cots and blankets. Mm-hmm. So we give food out to residents as well. So we do all the things that people think they need to have done when there's a crisis or when there's not a crisis. So we provide that kind of help.
Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. I know for you, the work that you do is a labor of love, and the city is the better for you, for your team, for your years of service. I know I've said it to you personally, but I'm going to say it publicly. I have always admired the work that you do on behalf of the city. And though I never said it, I consider you one of my mentors. Just the way that you care for the city, and you use your influence for those who are in the greatest need. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Braverman, do you have another slide that you need to present?
Just one more, but I'd ask Alice Kennedy to come forward. It's a summer meals, summer food program. And Alice, if you would be so kind, thank you, Councilman.
Hi, Alice Kennedy, Deputy Commissioner. Summer Food Service Program, service number 754. The City of Baltimore Department of Housing and Community Development is one of several summer food sponsors across the city. We are the largest sponsor, and by being a sponsor, that means that we have sites across the city that apply to us to provide summer meals to them for breakfast and lunch. The other sponsors are Family League, City Schools, Kids Table, which is part of St. Vincent de Paul, and a number of other smaller sponsors as well. Our funding is for this is purely grant funding. It comes from the USDA through the Maryland State Department of Education. It is a high-impact, short time frame for the service, and the main point is to try to get as many meals out as possible that we can. We serve over the summer. The City of Baltimore serves around 800 to 900,000 meals, and across the city we're serving over 1 million meals with all the sponsors included for that summer for breakfast and lunch. Included in it is we have a mobile meal van that we started last year. We partner with youth work sites. It's available to anybody, any youth 18 and younger, and we're also looking to partner with the public markets this summer to have locations in the public markets where youth can receive free breakfast and lunch.
Thank you, Alice. So time for questions, or do you have any?
No, I'm ready for questions, Councilman.
And Michael, maybe you can answer this, or
Yeah.
Mr. Scriber. As it relates to the before and after care, who is eligible, and how do parents apply for this?
It's a small budget. We get some
Right, I understand.
We get some purchases we get some vouchers, we call them vouchers, from the Department of DSS.
Okay.
Department of Social Service give us some vouchers, and some parents pay a little bit of money.
Okay.
And the rest we make up in the budget.
Gotcha.
So the budget is very small, and so it was $167,000 per annual last year. It's probably a little more than that this year because we have more kids, but it's a small budget. But most of that money is made up through the subsidy we get from DSS.
And so how, like, if a parent needed this type of service and there were potentially slots open, how would a parent apply?
Parents apply at our 2 locations, one at Northwood and one at Waverly. They can go right there. Right now, it's only capable of housing. We're only supposed to have 30 per location, but right now we overhouse. We have 30 I think 39, or close to 40 maybe at Waverly, and we have 44 at Northwood.
Gotcha.
And at this point, they can apply. And normally after kids reach the age of 12 or 13, they're moving into middle school. We think, and we usually keep a pretty good score of what the kids are achieving through the regular school day. So our teachers are working, and we have bona fide trained teachers at both locations, and they usually coordinate with the principals at both schools to make sure our kids are achieving well.
Okay.
Now, if a kid is not doing well, we give them a little more understanding and a little more, well, I ain't gonna tell you all the pieces in the public, but it's not easy. Children have to learn. It's there to make sure that kids are successful. We did have one failure last year where a kid didn't sustain or achieve what we thought he should achieve, but he's doing better this year, so it's a good thing.
A little gentle persuasion.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Councilmember Burnett, I think you had some questions, maybe for Commissioner Braverman. Thank you, Mr. Scriber.
Well, no.
Okay, for Mr. Scriber, or? Okay.
Or either. So, again, thank you, Mr. Scriber, for all you do and have done for the city and residents in District 8. You're probably more popular than I am in some parts of it. So thank you for that and your commitment to the work. I just had 2 really short questions right at the moment for the community outreach services on the in the performance measures in the budget book. It has two outputs that I had additional questions about on page, I think this is page 328, volume 1. It says one of the output measures or performance measures is the number of clients receiving assistance with sheltering. The target for fiscal year 18 was 550, but the actual was 190. And then 424 the year before, and 299. So it looks like, why does this number fluctuate so much over the last 3 fiscal years? But 2, what's being done to try and hit the target, or what are some of the barriers to hitting that target for assistance with sheltering? And then the second question was just when or if we can get the data for the number of households at risk of homelessness served each year. There isn't anything in there for fiscal year 18, 17, or 15, but I think we had the numbers for 16. Is there?
Sure. Well, let me answer the first question first. On the emergency shelters, we normally have an emergency that occurs that gives us the numbers. And sometimes emergencies doesn't come across as, we haven't had an emergency in 19. We haven't had emergency, we had emergency, I think, in 17 when we had the Landval Towers burnt down, and so we had to relocate everybody. So you may have 1 year where there's a lot of numbers, we have several emergencies, and 1 year, another year, you may not have any emergencies of that nature. Now, we could put intimidated witnesses down as emergency because we do house them for a period of time until we find a new location for them to stay, and we get something we send the police down there, and the police then transport them from place to place. So that happens too, but we can add that to our list, and I'll make sure you get that. So we can put that number in as a matter of fact. On the other piece, I'm trying to remember what you asked me.
So there just wasn't any data on the number of households at risk of homelessness served each year?
I mean, that may be an oversight. I will make sure you get that number, because we have a number of households that risk homelessness. We have relied basically on health care for the homeless and other homeless services agencies that deal with homelessness, but we get our share of people walking in the door and said, I need help and so forth, and we go a little different than homeless services. We go in terms of what your income is now, or do you have any income? Are you anticipating any income? And then if they're telling me they got some money from DSS, but it's been held up because they didn't go to the training program or the work program, we normally talk to our colleagues at DSS and make sure that they are going to get income. And if they're going to get income, and especially if they have small children, then we house them until that income comes about. We have a staff person whose primary responsibility is to then help them find decent and affordable housing, and we'll take that income and add to it, and we don't try to put them in a place where the income does not sustain them. Because a lot of times, if you put them in a place where the income is low and they can't sustain them, then they're back in another month or two. So they're being evicted or something like that. So we'll get that number for you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No questions? No other questions? Anybody got a song?
I mean,
Hey, you do not want to hear me sing, I can assure you that.
That is true. No, I mean, if there aren't any further questions, well, this committee, oh, okay. Until 4:30? Okay. So the committee is in recess until 4:30. Thank you, Mr. Braverman.
Thank you very much, Councilman Pinkett and members of the council. Thank you so much.
At 4:30, we'll have the panel on workforce development, which includes Mayor's Office of Employment Development, Office of Civil Rights, and Mayor's Office of Human Services.